Hi everyone, good morning. Mark here from Excel, and it's 10 o'clock on a Friday morning, and we seem to have four South American Chardonnays to taste. Now, this comes off the back of today's decanter and the expert tasting of South American Chardonnay that's in there. Looking at four particular wines, these are not the outstandings, the very top ones, these are the very top of the highly recommended. Looking at these for a couple of reasons. One, because I think in terms of value and style variation, they offer some really great opportunities for some super Chardonnays at very sensible prices. All of these are under £20. And I think also that article is not great at describing what sort of Chardonnay you're getting yourself into. Are you into a leaner Chablis style? Are you into a fatter Napa Californian style? Such a range of different wines possible with Chardonnay, such a range of different terroirs, altitudes, and climates available generally in South America, that I think it's worth describing what you're getting into there. So we have four wines, three Chileans and one Argentine, or Argentinian I think. They are the Leda Lot 5 from the San Antonio block of the Leda Valley. They are Errázuriz Aconcagua Costa Chardonnay from Aconcagua Costa. We have the Matetic EQ Quartz, again from San Antonio. And then we have from Argentina, from the Uco Valley, Zucardis Apelación. Now, I'm trying to just give you a bit of a sense of what the styles are about. If we take the Leda first, I have to say this is probably my favourite of the four. Clocks in at 94 points. On the nose, really interesting. Really tropical. Some really almost pungent flavours. The sorts of aromas you might expect with New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. There's some quite tropical flavours. I mean, almost passion fruit. Bit of kiwi there, and almost something like lemon meringue, some really quite pronounced flavours. On the palate, really concentrated. Acidity, really quite high. You know, it sounds slightly crazy, but it's not unlike a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc because of the high acidity, because of the tropical flavours. Really fascinating wine. Definitely recommended, but I think it's fair to say that probably on that scale from where 0 or 1 would be a really lean Chardonnay to 10, which would be a really fat Kistler style Napa or Californian Chardonnay. This is probably a 5. The kind of fruit ripeness is probably slightly higher than that. I would argue that probably the acidity and the body is a little lower. And the acidity is high, the body is a bit lower. So you're kind of a lower scale, but probably something like a 5 overall. Really fascinating wine. Now, we move to Errázuriz Aconcagua Costa. Much more restrained kind of wine. A little bit more oak on it. Certainly overtly on the oak. There's a bit of creaminess. I think there's a bit more malolactic fermentation gone on there. This is a softer wine. It's definitely more restrained, more laid back, quite Burgundian in a sort of Macon style. Doesn't have the same concentration. Has a bit more restraint than the Leda. Little bit more mouthfeel, little bit more body, more like a 6 on that scale. Really attractive. You could argue it doesn't have quite the same concentration. If you like a really concentrated Chardonnay, this is not the one. This is more relaxed, this is more laid back. Really fascinating. If we go to the Matetic, the EQ Quartz from San Antonio, on the nose, not a mile away from the Aconcagua Costa, but a little more concentrated. There's a little more fruit ripeness on that, a little more apricot, a little more stone fruit. There's also something a little bit savoury about it. Difficult to pin down, people will say it's saline or mineral or whatever, but there's something just a little bit edgier about it. And I would say it's probably a more concentrated, more forceful version of the Aconcagua Costa. This is a little more concentrated, a little more punchy, really nice actually, really interesting, hugely deep finish to it, really impressive wine. Finally, we'll go to Argentina for Zucardis Apelación, and this is definitely the edgiest of the four wines. This is the leanest. I mean, it's got a real richness and ripeness on the nose, which, I mean, it's quite citric, but there's also, it's definitely taken some serious sunlight to it. There's some real ripeness to those fruit flavours, but there's an edginess to it. You can pick up the acidity almost on the nose, the citricness of it, and then on the palate, There's a lot of bite on that. Really quite high acidity, a lot of zing to it. The most saline, the most mineral of these. Not surprising really, this is the one that relies on altitude for its cooler climate. It's got a lot more zip and zing to it. This is the edgiest, probably a sort of 3 on that scale. Really interesting again. A huge diversity in these wines. I think all of them under £20, really fascinating. I hope that gives you a little bit of a shape of what you're getting into. If you like the tropicality, go for the Leda. If you like the edginess, go for the Zuccardi. If you like something a bit more Burgundian, the Matetic or the Errázuriz, I think that's the sort of shape of thing you're into. Hope that helps.